Welcome to this session. Thomas Ball is Head of Business Advocacy for WWF. WWF stands for the Worldwide Fund for Nature. Thomas will be talking about his career journey as well as how WWF tackles the climate emergency and loss of nature.
Hello everybody, my name is Thomas Ball. I work for WWF, the Worldwide Fund for Nature, here in the UK. Today I'm going to be talking to you about working in partnership. I'll kick off with a little bit of an introduction to my background and where I've come from. I'll then talk about how I came to work for WWF and the work that we are known for. And then finally, I'll come on to working in partnership, which is the main premise of this talk, and why working in partnership and collaboration is so critical when it comes to tackling climate change and loss of nature. So I grew up in Dublin in Ireland. I went to Trinity College Dublin and studied natural sciences. I'd always had an interest in the natural world and actually wanted to work for National Geographic from quite a young age. And I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to learn more about the natural world and understand some of the challenges that we were facing when it came to the environment. I left Trinity College in 2002 and worked in environmental consulting and moved to Australia and worked in geographical information systems, so looking at some of the sort of Google Earth style imagery of the planet. And it was there I also grew my interest in photography and documentary making. At the end of 2006, I moved to London to study documentary making at the University of the Arts London, one of Europe's largest schools of art. And there I built on my natural sciences background and working in a journalistic form in terms of trying to understand, interpret, analyse some of the environmental challenges that were going on around the world. I built my career up over 10 years working on many challenging topics: natural resource extraction, so getting oil and gas and coal and the energy that we use out of the ground in most cases, was a key theme that I tackled, and our insatiable need for growth and the challenges that are faced around that. So I went to Canada and photographed quite a challenging area where tar sands have been extracted from the natural earth and some of the environmental damage that's caused by that. I did some work in the west of Ireland where there was challenges around extracting gas from under the sea on the west coast of Ireland, and some of the challenges and conflicts and protests from the local community there. I worked in Dubai in the Middle East and looking at some of the challenges of building a vast city where water shortage is really critical. I also got to meet and photograph and film and interview a great number of people, some many well known, from actors and politicians, artists, writers, poets. I also got to meet lots of people all in between, from community groups, community leaders. Got to work on commissions for many known publications and got to have the privilege of traveling around the world to meet many of these people. And what I learned through that was many of the challenges that we face are common across all of our backgrounds and differences. And some of the challenges from an environmental perspective are common too. And I was very interested in exploring those through my work, through photography and writing and filmmaking. And as I say, this was very much something which I'd had from a very young age. As part alongside this, I actually set up also another social enterprise. I co-founded a social enterprise with some people who've become very dear friends of mine in a part of northwest London where I now live, called Cricklewood. This building you see here is an old Victorian farm building that's been a farm here since the 1300s. And we spent many years trying to stop this building being demolished. And what we did was we set up a sort of group to fight for the building to be protected, to create a space for people to learn about nature, about history, about heritage, about having pride in their local area. And we started to introduce many of the themes which I've been working on in my documentary making around sustainability, growing food, understanding where your food comes from, learning about some of the challenges we face when it comes to community resilience. So how do communities respond to sort of changing climate and some of the socio-political challenges that we face today? We've had great success since 2013, building an incredible community garden, which we built from a disused piece of land. If you see here in the top left-hand side, we pulled out a huge amount of rubbish and created a really beautiful space, which you can see down the bottom left, built by the hands of many dozens of people who were working for free and volunteering and creating a really beautiful space for many other people to enjoy. What happened for me was a bit of a transformation because I'd worked on documentary making, I traveled the world, I'd got to see some incredible places and meet some incredible people. But what it brought home for me was the need for local-based activations when it comes to sustainability and tackling challenges. Many of the challenges we face today are at the global level. They're systemic, incredibly hard to tackle. They require huge numbers of people and resources to tackle these challenges. But equally, communities are very well placed to actually take on some of these challenges. and often best placed to take on those challenges, not just in communities in London or Dublin or rural parts of Ireland, but all across the world. When it comes to destruction of our natural ecosystems and some of the challenges we face, communities can be one of the best forces for good, and working in collaboration and partnership, which is a key theme of my talk, is going to be critical to that. In 2016, I wanted to change my career off the back of working on the social enterprise. It made me think about wanting to go back to my science roots where I had studied in Trinity, and maybe changing from documentary making into something else, and the role of business. And that was something I was very interested in, how business was a force often on driving environmental damage in the world, but equally it can be a force for good. And I could see that this shift was happening. So I went to study in Imperial College London, an incredible university in central London, and I studied environmental technology and focused in particular on business and the environment, that interface between how business can be a force for good, but also some of the challenges that we face now in terms of some of the damage that's caused through some of the products and services that you and I, buy, and sometimes we're not necessarily realizing some of the damage that's causing. So business is key, in my view, alongside a great many other actors and stakeholders when it comes to tackling the challenges we face. I came out of Imperial College and went into environmental consulting, so working with different businesses in the UK and abroad on some of the challenges they face and reframing some of their business models and how they do business. In 2018, I ended up in WWF, where I started working on strategy development for the organization. And as many of you may know or don't know, WWF is one of the world's largest conservation organizations. So I'm just going to stop now for activity for you all. So as I've given you a little bit of a background about WWF, I just want you to talk amongst yourselves or in your class or your group, or just even have a think if you're watching this on your own. And do you recognize our logo, WWF's logo? I'd be interested to know if you do, and what you think we do. Can you describe the work that WWF does? Just take a minute or two just to talk about that with your friends or colleagues, or just write down some notes for yourself. Okay, so I hope that activity was interesting for you. I'm intrigued to know, although I won't be able to hear, what you came up with and what your interpretation of. What I'm going to do is show you a short video, which we have been running here in the UK, and I think some of you may have seen it in Ireland as well. Just giving you a sort of an overview of some of the things that we're looking at talking about, and maybe just inspiring people to listen and to take action.
This is not about saving one panda, one forest, or one habitat. This is no act of charity. It's an act of survival. We are the first generation that knows we are destroying our home, and could be the last that can do anything about it. Join the fight for your world with WWF.
So some of you may have seen that before, some of you may have just seen that for the first time. It's quite a dramatic short advert for the work that we do. And the message that we're trying to get across is that although originally when WWF was founded in the 1960s, we were looking at saving key species from extinction, like the panda, hence in our logo. We know that many of the challenges that face today is not about just saving the planet or saving a particular species or saving a particular ecosystem. It's really about saving ourselves and our way of life that we've become used to. We live on a very stable planet for most of the time, and our climate and our weather allows us to be able to live the life that we do. But we have extracted and changed our planet and our weather systems and our climate patterns very dramatically over the last number of decades. And the work that we need to do now is about correcting that. And WWF is looking across a whole number of issues, not just about saving species, as critical as they are, but a great many number of systemic issues when it comes to climate change and loss of nature. So we talk about working for a future where people and nature can thrive together. You may not know, or some of you will know, that many of the products and resources and things that you survive on for your daily life, the food that you eat, the materials that are in your clothes, the materials that are make up the buildings that we live in, many of the products and services that we use are actually depend on natural systems. So ecosystems, forests, grasslands, wetlands, oceans, they all provide services, in many instances for free, for us to be able to create the standard of living that many of us here enjoy. There is a huge inequality in terms of how those resources are split up around the world. Many of the natural systems upon which we survive, we here in Western Europe, but also many other parts of highly urbanized parts of the world, we're using resources from very far distant parts of the planet. So we are using shampoos or cosmetics or food products which have been sourced from other sides of the world. And in many instances, the places that they're being sourced from are ecosystems which are some of our most biodiverse and now at risk. So some of the species which exist in those areas are at risk. And many have actually gone extinct, or some of them are close to extinction. So what we want to see in the future is a world where we can actually survive sustainably, where we can have a high quality of life, and that more people on the planet can have a high quality of life. Let's not forget that many people in the world do not enjoy the quality of life that many of us do. And how can we do that in a way that keeps our ecosystems safe, protected, restored, and returns some natural balance back into the world, because we have knocked our natural systems out of balance over the last 100 years. I'm sure many of you know this, but it's worth remembering that we live on a finite planet where we exist, part of a natural system. Damaging nature stops many of the systems upon which we need and creates a great number of challenges. Fundamentally, we can't survive without nature. We need it. We need those natural systems to function to be able to live the standard of living that we have today. So nature provides clean air and water, creates stable weather patterns, supports our health and well-being, provides many medicines, can protect us from extreme weather, provides a great number of resources from food and paper and wood. And of course, our natural systems can help us slow climate change in a great number of ways. WWF release the Living Planet report every 2 years. The last one came out in 2020. It showed that our loss of nature and of key species had declined even further from the previous 2 years. In fact, we believe that across an average of all the different species and ecosystems, it has been reduced by 68% since 1970. We know that humans are causing this by the way that we live. So just before I told you that we need nature to be able to survive, but we don't seem to be able to, we haven't been able to create a system upon which we are able to get a balance of natural systems being able to survive and thrive, and also provide the resources which we need. So we need a fundamental shift in how we source our products and services, where we buy them from, what we buy, how they're made, how they're recycled, how they're reused, how they're disposed of. And restoring our natural systems and biodiversity is critical within that. And we know that we can restore nature. We won't be able to return all of the species that maybe we have lost over the past, but we know that we can restore many of the ecosystems, and the populations of key species will rebound. But it will require a huge effort from all of us. And here in Western Europe, or in UK and Ireland, our level of biodiversity is also under threat. Our biodiversity is lower and potentially less critical than some of the other parts of the world where we rely on resources which create the natural systems that we need to survive. But all ecosystems are critical, and we need to be able to restore nature in the UK and Ireland and in Western Europe and North America, as well as also protect those key ecosystems in Brazil or Indonesia. And those systems are able to rebound, but we need a huge amount of work to make that happen. So coming on to working in partnership, and this is a key area that I've been working on in WWF. As I said earlier, we need to work in partnerships to solve some of the biggest challenges of our time. That's because no one person, organization, government, country can tackle this alone. There are some countries in the world which have caused some of the biggest challenges and damage to nature and climate change, primarily richer countries that have had more developed economies over the last few hundred years. But the challenge is now so great that we need all countries to come together, and all companies and communities to tackle this greatest of challenges, climate change and loss of nature. So in WWF, we look at partnerships as being critical to the work that we do. There are many ways you can describe partnerships, but what we do, we see as a network of organizations who can come together who share a vision, or who want to tackle a challenge, or tackle a problem, or come up with new purpose. And they can be doing this to achieve social, environmental, or business goals, or a great many other number of goals. So partnerships can be described and take form in many different ways, but this is just one way of describing it. And one of the things that we need to do in WWF, or we know we need to do, is working with business, as I said, as they are one of the biggest drivers of impact in the world, but also environmental impact, but also can be one of the biggest creators of change. So the 3 case studies I'll come on to are HSBC, one of the world's largest banks, Sky, which many of you may have heard of before, a media company, and then Tesco. I'm sure a number of you, or a great many of you, have heard of Tesco or know that you do your weekly shopping in Tesco, big food retailer based here in the UK and in many other countries around the world. So I'll come on to the Tesco partnership first. So we see food and the food that we eat, and agriculture and farming, as one of the critical areas that we need to tackle when it comes to climate change and loss of nature. The food that we eat has a great many impacts across the world. Although in Ireland we have great food security, we have an incredible farming heritage, and we are able to source a great number of our food products which we buy in our shops from actually within the island of Ireland. But also a great number of our food products are also sourced from overseas. You may be getting fruit or vegetables which are coming from a great number of other locations across the planet. Some of the shampoos or cleaning products or other materials which you buy in your supermarket shop can be sourced from products across the world, not just one other country, but multiple other locations. So all of these things that we buy on a weekly basis are having an impact. Some are known, some are less known. And we have a headline which is to have the environmental impact of the average UK shopping basket and to deliver affordable, sustainable and healthy food for all. So the reason we said this is because there are a great number of products which are common purchases by many families. So we want to tackle some of the challenges behind some of those everyday products that people buy. This may be milk or bread, different fruits. And in particular, we want to look at how farming and agriculture has an impact on the planet and how that we can reduce some of those challenges when we source products from across the other side of the world, like palm oil or soy. Some of these are grown in some of the most biodiverse areas on the planet, and they're also the most at risk. So working with one of the biggest food retailers is critical when it comes to tackling some of these challenges. WWF has great expertise when it comes to working on the ground in many countries around the world. We work in 100 countries, and we understand natural systems and the species and ecosystems that are under threat. Tesco is one of the biggest food trade retailers, and they have a great expertise in where those products have come from, and they understand the challenges which they face. But when it comes to environmental impact. So one of the things that we need to do together is actually about really identifying where the key ecosystems and species which are under threat, and making sure that we can reduce that and that we can restore natural balance as ecosystems and create a sustainable food system. So you and I, can continue to eat healthy food, but we can know that it's not just damaging nature or speeding up climate change. So part of that is about helping customers understand where their food comes from, some of the challenges around it. As many of you will know, there's lots of conversations and debates and people who are changing the way they eat. They're eating less meat or eating no meat. Some people are eating no animal products at all. Where we have come to with our partnership is less about telling people how they should eat and what they should eat, but helping them be informed about some of the impacts of the food that they eat. So we know that eating meat has more environmental damage in many instances across the world, partly because of the resources that it requires for those products. But equally, we know that a great deal can be done to reduce those impacts when it comes to the products and the food that we eat. So we want to be able to help customers eat more sustainably. As I say, we want to restore nature and food production. So how can farmers, a great many are doing some brilliant work when it comes to protecting natural ecosystems, but we know that we can do more. And then we want to eliminate food waste. Food waste is a huge challenge. I'm sure many of you have seen, even in your own households, food that you've thrown out, which you haven't been able to eat. Either it's gone off or you've bought too much or something you didn't like. And we want to reduce that because we know that we have a growing population who need to be able to have a healthy and sustainable diet. So the more that we reduce food waste, the less we reduce those impacts on our natural systems. So that's our partnership with Tesco. Next partnership I'm going to talk about is one with HSBC, one of the world's largest banks. HSBC has a huge business in Asia. It does have a very large business in Europe and North America and other countries in the world, but their biggest business is in Asia. So we've had a partnership with HSBC for a great number of years. We developed a new partnership with them called the Climate Solutions Partnership last year in 2020. And it's a 5-year partnership looking at the energy transition, which is moving away from fossil fuels, gas, oil, coal, towards renewable energy, solar, wind, and a great number of others. And we know that we need to do this if we're going to meet the climate challenge. If we need to reach a 1.5 degree pathway so that the world reaches only a maximum of 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, we know that that energy transition is critical. Ireland is doing great work when it comes to increasing renewable energy, but a huge amount more work is needed, and we need to increase investment in renewable energy and move away from fossil fuels as quickly as possible. Alongside this, we're looking at innovation. So what are the new innovations which we know are needed to tackle some of these challenges? Many of the technologies that we need to shift our economies away from fossil fuels or more damaging practices or products or services actually exist today. But the problem that we have is that our economic system has not allowed money to flow into those products and services in the way that we would like, or the speed that we need. So part of our partnership is about speeding up that driving of finance and money into those key technologies and those key projects and initiatives that we know that we need to restore balance to our natural systems. And a big part of that is also nature-based solutions. So this is a way of describing how the natural systems, forests, mangroves, marine ecosystems, freshwater ecosystems, are critical to tackling climate change. So, for instance, a city that may be challenged by rising sea levels or damaging storms may want to or may need to protect that city and the people that live within it. And there are different ways you can do that, and you can build big concrete walls or you can build flood defences, and that's what we've generally done in the past. But actually there are natural ways to protect our towns and cities. Not always, but in many cases there are natural ways we can do this. For instance, restoring mangrove forests, natural mangrove forests in key coastal locations can reduce erosion of coastal lands. They can reduce the energy that when waves hit the coast, and also can obviously create restored ecosystems for pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and locking it away in the trees and the roots. So there are many ways that we can tackle the challenges that we face from a warming planet and climate change, and we can do that through restoring and protecting natural ecosystems. So we see working with the finance sector as critical. Banks, investment houses, asset managers, they are the ones who have a key role when it comes to where money flows. They aren't the only solution, and they can't do this on their own, but we know that they are a critical part of the challenges, just like working with food retailers when it comes to tackling environmental damage through the food that we eat. Working with the finance sector is a key part of our mission, and will continue to be for years to come. Third partnership and case study I'm going to talk about is our partnership with SEAI. So we've had a partnership with SEAI for a great number of years, and our latest iteration of our partnership is called SEAI Ocean Rescue. This is focusing on, as you can see, on raising awareness around the critical role that our oceans play when it comes to the health and balance of our climate, the ecosystems upon which we source and extract a great number of products and services, and the critical role that oceans play in balancing temperature rises. Without our oceans, our planet would be a great number of degrees warmer. It has actually been able to cool our planet and absorb a lot of the carbon which we have emitted into our atmosphere. But our oceans are hugely under threat, can't continue to absorb all the carbon that we are putting into, can't keep up with it. The fish stocks and many of the species which exist in the sea have been under huge threat for many decades. And as part of our partnership, we have been raising awareness of the critical role of protecting and restoring marine ecosystems. And so one of the things we've been working on is an Ocean Heroes campaign. So inspiring people to talk about some of these challenges, to talk to others about the need to protect oceans and coastal ecosystems, and why we rely so heavily on our oceans and our seas for our a balanced planet and climate. So we did a huge campaign in 2020 and 2021 where we were talking to a huge number of people around the UK in particular about the need for the UK government to commit to protecting more parts of our seas and to drive investment and put regulation in place to protect our oceans and our seas. And this was a very successful campaign, and we got over 280,000 people to be involved and to talk about the need to protect our marine systems. So across those three partnerships, and that is just three partnerships we're working on, and we have a great many more, we're taking on key systemic challenges. As I say, working in partnership, we, WWF, working with SEAI, Tesco and HSBC to tackle those topics of food, finance and oceans. But there are so many other areas which we work on, that we need to work on, that other environmental organisations are working on. And working in partnership and collaboration is critical. As I said, no one organisation, person or country or community can do this on their own. It's about looking across some of these key challenges and seeing how we can work together and find common goals and purposes, and understanding about how we can actually restore balance to our ecosystems, restore balance to the way that we rely upon natural systems, and ensure that we are taking seriously the real crises that we face when it comes to climate change and loss of nature. Without working in partnership, we will not beat these challenges. So what I'd like you to do just quickly now is just pause this video and talk to your classmates or to a teacher, or if you're on your own, write down some notes and think about who do you think your school needs to partner with to tackle climate change and loss of nature. Who would be the best people to do that with? Maybe you're doing it already, but who else could you work with? And then think about what you can achieve in partnership that your school could not achieve alone. So I'm sure there's lots of examples you can think of. Think about who you could work in the local area, or whether you'd want to work with national governments or other organisations. To take a minute to talk about those things. So this is coming to the end of my talk. I'm sure you all know who this is, Greta Thunberg. What an incredible, inspirational young person she is. And I know a great number of other people young people who are doing equally impressive things around the world in terms of raising awareness of the challenges of climate change and loss of nature. Her comment here, change is coming whether you like it or not, can be viewed in many ways. Change is coming in terms of a new generation of young, informed, energetic, passionate young people are coming through, and they are holding older generations to account, politicians, business leaders, all the people who have the power at the moment. Change is coming because the younger people are coming through. And this is very exciting. I know that there is a lot of anxiety when it comes to some of these challenges, but equally it is exciting to see lots of young people coming through who want to make that change. But change is also coming, as I say, in terms of the rate of change in our planet and our degradation of natural systems and climate change. That's coming whether we like it or not, but we have something that we can do about it. So I'll leave this with you. The future is ours to shape. So we have the technologies, we have the wherewithal, we have the knowledge to be able to tackle these challenges, but they are difficult. They do require different ways of thinking, different ways of working, new business models, changing some of the things we buy, changing the way we eat, changing how we live, the houses that we live in. But there's huge opportunity in that. Through the COVID pandemic, as devastating and as sad and challenging as has been, it has also shown a great number of people that there are many things that we have maybe taken for granted. The natural spaces around where we live, the parks, our gardens, seeing more wildlife, seeing some species and animals coming back because we were less out and about. And so we have an opportunity to really embrace that and to really appreciate the natural systems and the world around us upon which we need to protect. But there's a challenge, because we're potentially going back to some of our ways of working and ways of living that we had just before the pandemic. We need to not lose sight of that appreciation that we discovered during the last year to year and a half. So I hope you found that talk useful. A lot of things I've talked about in there, and hopefully you can talk about this with your classmates or your friends or your family. I hope you all are enjoying the Climate and Nature Summit, and wish you all the best.
The climate and nature action for this session is to support a petition or start your own. A petition can be a request appealing to an authority for a particular cause. For example, you might start a petition in your school to get your principal and deputy principals to improve the school grounds for biodiversity. Have a look at petitions on uplift.ie or change.org. Choose a topic that's important to you. It could be about animals, human rights, health, or even something different. We have some examples of petitions you could sign on our website. Make your voice heard. Is there someone in the class right now, a student or a teacher, who will take a lead on this? Every so often you might just ask the class, have you checked on the petitions and signed any? Keep the conversation going.